is my absolute pleasure to introduce a true inspiration, a force of nature, an extraordinary athlete, an enduring coach, an amazing personality of the global film world, Lesley Paterson, who's flown in from Los Angeles just to be with us this morning. Lesley's journey is a testament to the power of human spirit, resilience, and the pursuit of excellence. She has mastered the art of pushing limits, physical, mental, creative, proving that success knows no limits when passion drives you. We're thrilled to dive into her story today, her mindset, and the lessons she's learned along the way, and the lessons that she's going to share with us. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Lesley Paterson on stage. Let's give her a round of applause.
Hi. So great to be here. Hi. Like any true athlete, we have to high five.
Okay, ma'am. All right. You know, I've been just incredibly amazed at, so Lesley was up at 3 a.m. this morning, running on the streets of Singapore. I have no idea what she did. She said I was parched, it's very humid. But let's get started, Lesley. As someone who has achieved greatness in not one field, which is tough for most of us, you've done this in 2 different fields. And help us understand, what does success mean to you? And have you sort of evolved as a human being, dealing with 2 different fields and being successful in both?
Totally. Success, as we all know, is such a weird and difficult thing to kind of wrap our heads around. And I think for me, certainly when I was younger, right, success meant that external validation, being put up on a pedestal. You know, everybody, wants to be on stage, wants to hold that gold medal. But, external validation is so much, it really is focused on the things that we cannot control. It's all about outcome. Right? And outcome, generally, we can't define it, we can't control it. So therefore, the thing that I really focused on was the things I could control. And for me, that was very much about effort and attitude. And one of the things my husband always taught me was you can always commit to 100% effort and attitude in anything that you do. Never throw the towel in and you'll go to bed at night and you'll sleep well. And that effort and attitude for me is all about mastery of craft. Step by step, focusing on every tiny little detail. And that's where the joy comes for me as well. And that mastery of craft, ironically, of course, ends up leading to outcomes. It ends up leading to external validation and external success. But what I learned in my journey was that external success didn't always lean towards the internal success. And what I mean by that, well, internal success for me is all about my why. Because, hey, listen, when you're 2nd world champion, 3rd world champion title, like, what does it mean to you? How do you keep having the hunger? It then becomes about the why. And in sport and in art, they're very different things, and they're changing and they're morphing. But what I've found is success becomes true success when those 2 things meld, when you get the external and the internal together. And I'll talk really quickly about an example of that. When I won my 1st world title, of course, it's super exciting and all the rest of it, but the girl in front of me, she actually collapsed, and I ran past her to win. Now, everyone said it was a fluke, is she going to do it again? And I put all this pressure on myself the 2nd time around. And so I had to really kind of think about my why. Why am I doing this? What do I love about the sport? I love mastering my mind. I love dealing with the pressure, coming in, winning that battle, winning that fight. And moreover, my dad, who was such a huge part of my sporting career, he was not there for the 1st world title, but he was for the 2nd. So when I won, it was this wonderful convergence of the perfect race. I was in the zone, I was prepared, I'd done everything perfectly, and I delivered, and my dad was there to see it. So those internal and external levels of success combined in that one moment, and I still remember it today. It gives me goosebumps.
Amazing. If you noticed in the video that we played, there was a quote from a book which Lesley's co-authored with her husband, Simon, where it says, "When the going gets tough, the tough leave me behind." And that is a completely new take on what does it mean to be tough? What does it mean to be... How do you manage ambition at one end and your well-being as a human being at the other? And these are, again, two very different fields. How do you bring those two together?
I'll tell you not very well. Lesley Paterson is not synonymous with balance, and anybody that knows me, in fact, there's been interventions, people trying to step into my life saying, "You're not balanced enough." But I think we all know that anybody that reaches the top in anything, let alone two fields, are generally not balanced. And it's the thing that got you there. For me, that's drive, grit, determination, obsession, that are also your undoing. But I feel like I am so lucky that I have these two areas of my life. I have art and I have sport. And I find that one kind of balances out the other and helps the other. Because in my world of sport, I get very obsessed. I kind of isolate. I'm tired all the time. Sometimes I'm training 6 to 8 hours a day, starting at like 4 a.m. This morning was 3 a.m. And, I'm very monastic in my lifestyle. I'm digging in. It's very, very intense. And it becomes somewhat of a selfish pursuit, whereas my art is all about opening my eyes, looking out on the world, understanding who I am as a person so that I can write characters. And so I find that if I kind of meld those two things together, it helps me advance as a human being. But I think the most important thing that I've garnered from all of this is self-awareness. How can we understand our own strengths and weaknesses and therefore find ways to balance them out? And I've been fortunate enough to have amazing friends like yourself, my family that are here today, my sister-in-law Vic, and family to really kind of pull me out and to find gratitude in everything that I'm doing. And so the first thing that I do when I find myself getting out of balance is to reconnect. I find gratitude, and I find gratitude by giving back. And that's been a huge arc. I'll say arc because I'm a screenwriter. We call it the character arc, so that's my arc.
Interesting. Now, world champions like yourself are deeply focused. And before a game, before a race, before a match, they have this ability to shut their minds out. They have routines, they have methods, they don't do certain things, they do certain things. They have all sort of things that they do. Do you have any such that you are guilty of doing before you head out to compete?
Very guilty. And you're going to love this one. So I'm lucky in that my husband was a psychologist, and so we wrote a book together where we were understanding how the brain works. And he really taught me a lot, because I think if you understand how the brain works, you can kind of hack it to get the best out of yourself. And one of the methods that I use to this day, in fact, I'm using it right now, don't tell anyone, is I have an alter ego. Certainly when I race, I have an alter ego. When I'm writing, I have an alter ego. When I'm filming, when I'm presenting, I have an alter ego. But I'll tell you about my sports one because it's kind of fun. I'm sure everybody here has heard about Conor McGregor, the MMA fighter. So I am a closet, MMA fighter. I love it. I love to, do my moves. Anyways, Conor McGregor, he always gets up when he's knocked down. He has this kind of he has this walk, he has this air of confidence. He has a lot of traits that I feel I don't have as a person, me, Lesley Paterson, whether it's confidence, whether it's worrying about what other people say or do. So I started to watch videos of Conor McGregor, and I would start to adopt his behavior, the way that he would walk, the way that he would stand, the way that he would clench his fists. And those were ways for me to kind of hijack my own inner doubts and to essentially kind of become this character. And we know through psychology, we know through science that thoughts lead to emotions, lead to behavior. And now we actually know the reverse is possible. So behavior leads to emotion, leads to thoughts. So you can actually change your thoughts. So if you're doubting yourself, if you're in fear, if you're not able to capitalize on your ability, by having these stance, these physical behaviors, they can actually have an impact. So my alter ego is called Paddy McGinty. So be sure to come up and speak to Paddy after this.
Interesting. Okay, so how many of us have an alter ego here like Paddy McGinty?
Yes.
Okay, I don't, but maybe I should. Let's talk a little bit about failure. And the FinTech Festival is about entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship, which at the start requires you to accept that rejection and failure and repeated rejection and repeated failure and falling 7 times and getting up 8 is what this will be.
Yep.
How should, or rather first let's start with, how do you deal with failure? Because there is only there's only one number one.
Yep.
And if you're 2, nobody knows you. So how do you deal with that failure, and what would you advise all of us to try to learn from you?
What does failure really mean? And what does it lead to? It leads to growth. And how do we really get better? How do we succeed? We grow. And the best part about this is, as a screenwriter, that is actually called the hero's journey, which I'll talk about in the founder's stage later this week. But ultimately, what we're doing is we're facing obstacles, and we're learning and growing by those obstacles and through that failure. But more importantly, what's super fascinating is, again, luckily having Simon in my corner, he taught me that the brain, the neuroplasticity of the brain, it changes. There's a part of your brain called the anterior cingulate cortex, which actually gets denser and grows. I mean, this is kind of a rudimentary sense of it. But it gets denser and it grows so that you can deal with more adversity as you face it. So in many ways, it's like brain training. So now reframing that failure and saying, oh my gosh, this is my opportunity to get stronger. It's almost like the overload principle in training. Let's work really hard so that my muscles get stronger such that I can deal with the next race that's going to come my way.
It's amazing how you're talking about this, and I know you will do this at the Founders Speak stage with a little bit more depth, and you will ask questions to all the audiences. You will allow audiences to ask questions. Let me talk a little bit about how is it that the physical strength that you don't look to be who you are. And I look to be less than bad that I am. I have a question. What should leaders who are trying to change or adapt to something which is new for them, something which is they've never done before, something that is worrying or injects fear in them, how should that pivot get done mentally for leaders?
I think it comes down to, why do we all do what we do? And I think for me, it's ultimately about purpose and meaning. And I'll talk in a minute about Man's Search for Meaning, a specific book that is really near and dear to my heart. But it's about purpose and meaning. That is what anchors our happiness, our joy, our love of the world, our love of life. And purpose and meaning is all about having a mission and having a mission in your work. And so for me, when it comes to pivoting and changing, I need to give energy to that mission. If I'm not challenging myself and thinking outside the box, then that mission becomes stale. And so I'm always looking at new opportunities to grow and develop. And that's why, I'm able to pivot the way that I'm doing. I enjoy facing failure, reaching new tasks, because for me, that's life. Life is about change, life is about growth, and I love that.
I do want to talk a little bit about, you were supposed to be on this stage with us last year. And then you learned about Simon, and we are with you here today. We're very privileged to have you. This is probably your first real public appearance. Tell us, how are you planning on celebrating Simon's legacy? Simon and Lesley have written a book called
the book is called The Brave Athlete. Calm the F down and rise to the occasion. So that's a redacted
Yeah.
F.
So it's calm the F down, and I have read it. I have, I think, something like 100 post-its inside that. Every page is just so deep. How are you planning on celebrating Simon's legacy?
So, you know, Simon and I were married for 23 years. I was married from the age of 20. He was 10 years older than me. And he's taught me everything that I know. And through really digging into this book, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, a very famous book, that ironically, the day he was diagnosed in November of last year, it was the day we got the gig to adapt the novel. And this book is beautiful. Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist that based his theories on the theory of meaning, the therapy of meaning. And he went through the Holocaust and kind of cemented those theories in the Holocaust. And one of the biggest things, I'm lucky in that, digging into this during this time, was how do we take suffering and put meaning to it? And so out of that, you have to focus on having triumph out of tragedy. So for me personally, to celebrate him, I've been making a documentary because all of us will face some kind of tragedy if we haven't already. Certainly in the face of cancer, I'm sure many people either have had a diagnosis themselves or will do, or their family members will do. And I wanted a documentary to follow us so that we could authentically show what is that like. People never expect that it's going to be them. And especially when you've had the kind of success and the privilege that we have had, the support that we have had. And so I hope to help and to give back and to inspire. And that will give meaning to his suffering, which was immeasurable and awful, and to my suffering moving forward. I'm also setting up a foundation as well. And I think at the heart of this is about freedom of choice. And this is something that Viktor Frankl talks about. We all get to choose how we react to any situation. We can't control the situation, as I spoke about earlier, but we can control our reaction to it. You know, there's a sense of how we should grieve out there. There's a sense of having a chip on the shoulder or being a victim, and that's not who I am. It's never been who I am. So to celebrate Simon, it really is about the gorgeousness of humanity, all of this love, all of this support that has come around me and him and his family and my family, and paying it forward. So, you know, that's why I love to come and do these talks, so that people can see that through weakness, through vulnerability, through failure, comes the growth, comes the success, and comes the connection with other humans, which is why we're here.
Amazing. Okay. Thank you for that. What are you doing in Singapore?
Okay, so in Singapore, other than running up and down a bunch of stairs this morning, so if anyone saw me sweating a bunch, I was like running up and over the overpass because I like hills. I am going to have some chili pepper crab.
Okay, so those of you who are visiting Singapore for the first time, make sure chili pepper crab.
Chili pepper crab.
Okay, and you know, it's not unlikely that you will find Lesley doing push-ups on some staircases going up on an overbridge somewhere on the street. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause for Lesley for being with us. Lesley is going to be taking stage at the Founders Stage tomorrow afternoon around 2 o'clock, and she will take some questions as well, so please do make it a point to mark it in your diary and join us there. Exactly. Thank you, Lesley.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great time here. Come and join me tomorrow for a workout.